I recently made a video called Dear Christians, Start Making Faith-Based YouTube Content. I talked about the importance of starting, and I briefly touched on imposter syndrome. But looking back, I felt I didn't go deep enough. I felt I didn't show how the Bible actually gives us steps to follow as Christians to actually overcome that fear. Before we dive in, here is a quick 10-second intro about me because I've never done it before on this channel. I've been a wedding filmmaker for 12 years. I've been blessed to win some awards based on my wedding films. I've been on YouTube since 2010 with 2 previous channels, one where I followed my journey as a wedding filmmaker and the other where I followed my journey as a saltwater aquarium hobbyist. But the reason I share all this, and while I do want you to get to know me, it's definitely not to brag, it's to say this: even with all that video experience that I had, when I felt called to create Christian content, I instantly thought, I'm not worthy, I'm not smart enough, I'll look like a fraud. So I felt the need to make this video again because I can only imagine the pressure for those of you who don't have any video experience and the added weight of being a Christian creator. You start thinking, what if I say something wrong? What if I misrepresent God? And then there's that quiet fear in the back of your mind, back in my mind. What if other Christians watch my video and think they're not spiritual enough to be doing this? But what I had to learn, and I'm still learning, is that there's not a certain level of holiness that you need to have to be allowed to talk about Jesus on YouTube. So initially when I made this video, I was going to use 1 Timothy for it, but I really think Romans gives us a lot of useful info as well for dealing with imposter syndrome as Christian content creators and as Christians in general. All right, let's start with Romans chapter 3, verse 10, which says, "There is none righteous, no, not one." So here, the Apostle Paul is quoting from the Old Testament, specifically Psalms 14, verses 1 through 3, and Psalms 53, verses 1 through 3, to emphasize that all humanity is guilty before God, setting up our need for salvation through Jesus Christ. So let's chip away at our imposter syndrome a little bit more with Romans 3, verse 23. The Apostle Paul says, "For all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God." So here Paul is saying that everyone, Jew and Gentile alike, all need the grace of God through Jesus. So let's really be honest and go to some of the thoughts that a lot of us have, where we say to ourselves, we're not enough. And we're right. We can't be enough on our own. Think about the Apostle Paul, who in his past used to hunt the followers of Jesus. He was definitely not the perfect messenger, but God's not looking for perfect messengers. He's looking for willing ones. So I'm going to kind of summarize Romans chapter 4, which talks about how Abraham was justified by faith and not by, for lack of a better word right now, his resume. He believed, and that was enough. Then in Romans 5, verses 8, Paul says, "But God demonstrates his own love towards us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us." While we were still doubting, still unqualified, still struggling with sin, still fighting imposter syndrome, Jesus died for us. And that's our identity, not our quote-unquote Christian credibility. Based on Bible verses that we've looked at so far, here are 3 simple steps to get over the fear of spreading God's word online, or on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram. First, create in your identity in Jesus, not in insecurity. Don't create content to prove yourself. You're not filming to look holy, impressive, or good enough. We create because Christ died for us while we were still unqualified. So let your content flow from who you are already in Him, not from who you're trying to become online, this persona you're trying to build. Like, I will tell you, my name is Thomas Brown, and I still struggle with certain sins, but every day I'm trying to be better. But there's one thing that I know: for the rest of my life, I'm going to dedicate my life to Jesus, and I'm going to try to make as many disciples for Jesus as I can. Yeah, it was bound to happen, but I broke this piece right here. So I'm gonna try to take epoxy and glue it back together. So remember, you're not alone in falling short. When you feel like you're not good enough, it's okay. It's part of the truth. Remember, Paul said it plainly: there is none righteous, not even one. All have sinned. That means the pressure is off. You're not supposed to be perfect or the perfect messenger. You're just supposed to be a faithful one. And I always like to add in that you still want to study the Bible to make sure that your message is biblically sound. And don't be afraid to reach out to someone you trust who is further along in their Christian journey than you are to bounce your video ideas off or your points off of. I do this all the time. So trade perfection for faithfulness. Abraham was justified by faith, not by getting everything right. We don't need to be or to have spiritual perfection to start creating. We just need belief. Hopefully the Gorilla Glue will hold. So we shouldn't say to ourselves that we will start creating content for other Christians or creating content to bring others to Christ once we feel worthy, because God already is everything we need. He's faithful, ever-present, and sufficient. He is more powerful than any confidence that we will ever have in ourselves. Can I be even more honest with you guys? While I was studying 1 Timothy and then Romans to make this video, I still wrestled with imposter syndrome. Will people really get useful information out of this video is what I was thinking. But in rereading Romans, I was reminded of something, and it's something we should all remember when we're reading any part of the Bible. I am not the hero of the story. Jesus says. God bless.